Headline: all fossil fuels that we save through renewable energies is burned elsewhere. To the lecture. Climate change requires a global strategy. National approaches alone will not solve the problem. The European Union wants to be climate neutral by 2050. But what is happening in the rest of the world? This question is crucial because this rest of the world produces about 93% of human GHG emissions, means greenhouse gases. We have an ecological problem, and the solution lies above all in smart economic decisions. In the following, when I talk about economic aspects, I will refer to the statements of two economists who are well known in German-speaking countries and in some cases also internationally. About myself, I'm a landscape engineer and my work focuses on water management. I have been involved with climate change since the 1970s. To the first graph. It's about the population development. 2000 years ago, the world had about 230 million people. Around 1800, we passed the 1 billion mark. Today, there are more than 8 billions. 1770 is a very important date, the invention of the modern steam engine by James Watt. This was the beginning of the industrialization. The railroad followed, the mechanization of agriculture, and later the invention of nitrogen fertilizer, which all led to much higher food production. The building of sewer systems in the cities meant that feces no longer ended up in the streets, which reduced infectious disease enormously. Modern medicine was put on a scientific basis. All of this led to a rapid population growth, as you can see here. The next graph is out of the World Economy Atlas 2020-2021 by Flassbeck speaker today. Flassbeck is one of the economists I will refer to. If you look at this, it's 240 years from 1770 to 1990. Half of all man-made CO2 was emitted, and in the following 25 years the same amount was added. This steep curve is the real danger. Remember, we started climate change with just a few hundred million people. Now billions of people are contributing to global warming. And in the future it will be the whole world, because everyone wants prosperity, which is still based on fossil fuels. This data is from Copernicus. It's the European Earth observation system. It shows the global warming. In 2024, the temperature rise exceeded 1.5 degrees Celsius. This was the mark that should not be exceeded according to the agreement of the Paris Climate Conference in 2015. The temperature increase refers to this period, from 1850 to 1900, the pre-industrial period. They take the medium temperature of these 50 years. Copernicus calculated the global warming 2024 with 1.6 degrees over this pre-industrial period. Other institutions give slightly different numbers. NASA 1.47, World Meteorological Organization 1.55, plus minus something, Berkeley Earth 1.62 degrees Celsius. This has to do with the different interpretation of the data, especially of this period. The exact number is less important. Important and dangerous is the steep upward curve. This graph, also from Copernicus, shows the temperature increase since 1965. Each bar represents the average temperature of 1 year. As we see, the temperature does not rise every year, it fluctuates. But overall the curve is steep. The next few years could be cooler because of the El Niño effect. El Niño is currently adding extra heat. El Niño is a periodically recurring weather phenomenon in the South Pacific that can raise global temperatures. In this graph you see a comparison between the graphs you have seen already. Population growth, CO2 emissions and global temperature increase. It fits together. This and the following graphs come from the United Nations, the Emission Gap Report 2024, so the data should be from 2023. GHG refers to all greenhouse gases emitted by humans, not just CO2 like in the first graph. It looks like we are slowly moving in the right direction. GHG emissions in the US and Europe have been falling. In the US from 7 gigatons 2008 to 6 gigatons in 2023. And Europe from 5 gigatons in 1990 to 3.5 gigatons 2023. 1 gigaton means 1,000 megatons and 1 megaton means 1,000,000 tons, so this is a lot. Considering that the US and Europe were the biggest emitters for more than 100 years, one would assume that this is reflected in the global data. Let's take a look. Let's take a look. Here. First I have to explain the graph. So black is coal, gas, oil. This color means methane. It comes from cattle, rice fields and organic waste. Nitrogen oxides come out of the combustion engines. Red are fluorinated gases from industry, and green means land use change and forest change. It's nothing else than slash and burn farming in the tropical rainforests. And here we see a larger dip. This was the corona dip in 2020, when the ships stuck in the ports. This is a very small one, 2008, the economic crisis. But those are the only dips. Otherwise, the curve is currently rising. So this is the big disappointment. Our savings are not visible in the global data. What is the reason? China. Not only China, but above all. China has achieved a tremendous economic growth with a population of 1.4 billion people. It emits meanwhile 2.5 times more than the United States. And look at India. India, 1990 it was here, and now meanwhile, 2023, it emits more than the European Union. And it's a steep curve. And we look at Brazil, the green pyramids. That is slash and burn farming in the tropical rainforest. Means nothing else than the CO2 deposited in the trees is released again, and in the end is in the atmosphere. So we could say it's China and the other developing countries, but also before China's rise, fossil fuel production never went down, not even in times of crisis in the rich industrial countries. The reason becomes clear in the next two graphs. This graph is from Wikipedia. Here you see the fluctuations of crude oil prices using Brent crude oil as an example. The prices go up and down. And in 2008, at the global economic crisis, the price dropped from over $140 per barrel to under $40 per barrel. One barrel is about 160 liters. If the price falls so sharply, we would assume that the producers would reduce production due to loss of profits. But this is not the case. The reason for this is because the profit margin is extremely high. On the Arabian Peninsula, producing one barrel oil costs only about $8 to $12. So even at $40 per barrel, producers make a lot of profits. As we can see, the price goes up and down, fluctuates, and the oil production keeps on rising. The fat black caterpillar keeps eating, getting fatter and fatter, no matter the price. If the rich industrial countries have an economic crisis, the price goes low, and the emerging and developing countries means the poorer countries will then buy more, because then they can afford it. We come to the problem. All fossil fuels that are saved in some countries are burned in other countries around the world. That's why we need a global strategy and a global agreement. This is the core message of two well-known economists, Heiner Flassbeck and Hans-Werner Sinn. Both independently arrived at this conclusion through data analysis. Unfortunately, this has not yet been incorporated into policy. Flassbeck worked at the German Institute for Economic Research, was State Secretary in the Ministry of Finance and later Chief Economist at UNCTAD in Geneva. UNCTAD is about development and integration of developing countries in the global economy. He bases his statement strictly on data. Sinn was president of the IFO Institute for Economic Research and is professor emeritus at the Ludwig Maximilian University in Munich. We come to the solution. Prices for fossil fuels must rise more sharply than prices for other products. Production volumes must be limited and reduced over time. Saved fossil fuels must remain in the ground and may not be burned in other countries. To achieve all this, we need an international agreement. To this end, the most important countries and producers must come together around the table. Without producers, it makes no sense. We all know this agreement will be an Herculean task, but we have no chance. We should be able to do it. We also managed to found the United Nations in 1945. I share three quotes from publications by Heiner Flassbeck, one of the two economists. The real environmental scandal is the fact that the actual price of oil today is no higher than it was in 1970. You may not believe it when you are at the gas station, but if you compare the price of goods from 1970 and today in relation to these prices, gas is not more expensive. This price is by far the most important market signal. The aim is to reach an agreement between all countries at the global level in which they commit to allowing the prices of CO2 containing energy sources to rise more sharply than the prices of all other products from now on. Demand for fossil fuels will decline permanently if the price of these raw materials rises relative to all other prices in a predictable, steady and rapid manner. Setting such a price path is necessary to allow market mechanisms to take effect so that intelligent solutions can be achieved without prescriptive rules of conduct. Means to avoid bureaucracy. Here is a simple solution suggested by Heiner Flassbeck. The lower green curve shows average price increases in most industrialized countries at about 2%, which is common. The red curve above it shows oil prices rising 1% faster, at 3%. It starts very soft, but at some point the gap widens considerably. This way everybody knows where prices are heading and when an investment in renewable energies will pay off. Governments, companies and citizens. It provides planning security and is easy to understand. I have to tell you, there is also an alternative, like the emission trading system in the European Union, but it is very bureaucratic, complicated and therefore open to manipulation. At least it would be better than nothing if it would exist worldwide. Consequences of such an agreement, I give a few examples. Most important is the regulation through price. This reduces regulatory policy and is unbureaucratic. It gives planning security for industry, business, trade and private individuals. No need for a ban on straws. Imagine special regulations for every single product. We call this a bureaucratic monster. Plastic waste becomes very valuable. Recycling pays off. Mineral water is no longer transported across Europe, which is completely nonsense. Electric car subsidies are unnecessary. It pays off. Implementation of technical innovations increase. Global change in leisure behavior, for example less air travel because air travel will become expensive. Construction management will use less cement because cement will become expensive. Strengthening local agriculture, regional products, local craft business because transport will become expensive. With the next two graphs, I show you how serious the situation will develop over the coming decades if developing and emerging countries catch up with our level of prosperity. This graph is also from the Atlas of World Economy 2020-2021. The red bars show the annual GHG emissions per person per year in tons. The grey bars show the total annual GHG emissions per year in megatons. The United States emits about 18 tons per year, per person, and Germany 9.8 and France 5.1, thanks to nuclear power, which causes, of course, a lot of other problems. India is very low per person at 2.4 tons per year. But because of its large population, India is already the third biggest emitter in the world. China emits 8.2 tons per person, and due to its large population, its total emissions are about 12,000 megatons. It's as much as the United States, Europe and Brazil together. I have added to the previous graph the bars for India, Africa and Southeast Asia and South and Central America. If they catch up with the prosperity of China, means 8.2 tons per person per year. So India will end up here at least, because India in the moment has more people than China, 1.5 billion. Africa the same, and here the same. That's the question: what will happen if the emerging and developing countries catch up with China's standards? Ultimately, not only these three bars, but ultimately everyone in the world wants our prosperity. The only crucial question is with fossil fuels or without. And prosperity is not a fixed quantity, but like expanding gas. The emissions of the current industrialized countries then appear insignificant if you compare it with the developing countries. So, to bring the issue into politics and onto the agenda of climate conferences, I have written this petition. If you agree, you can sign it online and share it with friends, colleagues and politicians. You can find it on the internet at this link: change.org. Fossil fuels must remain in the ground, the prices must rise. Summary: bringing the most important countries and producers to the table. We need an agreement at the international level. The prices for fossil fuels must rise more sharply than prices for other products. Production volumes must be limited and reduced over time. Saved fossil fuels must remain in the ground and may not be burned in other countries. This issue must be addressed in politics and placed at the top of the agenda of climate conferences. And here's the petition. Here I have attached extracts from Flassbeck's publications where the topic is explained again in clear economic terms for you to read. This winter I plan to post more parts of my climate lecture online. In it I also show practical examples of resilience measures and also examples from my professional practice. Thank you for your attention. I hope you enjoyed my lecture. Goodbye.